Welcome to NDTR Spotlight, the corner of the internet where NDTR shine. I'm your host, Marie Lorraine, and today I'm so thrilled. So normally I don't get a lot of people who nominate themselves, but today I have someone who nominated themselves, and I'm so happy he did because I would not have found him on my own. He is doing so many things, and I'm excited to pick his brain on what he's doing. And he's also currently in the process of becoming a dietitian, but he wants to take the DTR exam. I'm telling you, this is an interview to listen to because the journey is so unique, but I think will be very, very inspiring for anyone who chooses to listen. He has a BS in nutrition and he's a licensed physical therapist assistant. He's currently working on a social media page, My Portion Nutrition, which will come out in time. He'll give us a scoop on that. And his biggest accomplishment is being a part of the Illinois State University social media chair for dietetic internships. And he recently graduated with his bachelor's of science. And so he also has so many credentials after his name. I didn't even want to get into all of them. We did a podcast where we talked about the importance of DTRs having extra credentials. And Mark is the max level of having these credentials. And so without further ado, let us meet Mark. Mark, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Marie, thanks for having me.
Yes, 100%. I'm so excited. So normally I ask, how'd you find out about the NDTR credential? But with you, I want to start with, can you just talk about all of the credentials you currently have behind your name?
Yes, so I'm going to start with the first one I got, which is the Certified Personal Trainer. And I got that through the American Council of Exercise. And so after having that, I wanted to not only just get continuing education courses, but get something that can benefit me. So I got the Fitness Nutrition Specialty Certification through ACE. And then after that, it wasn't too long till I added another credential. It was like within a month apart. I graduated from PTA school. So I got an associate's degree as a physical therapist assistant. And then I took a licensure exam and I passed it on my first attempt as a physical therapist assistant. And so, same thing with ACE, I passed that exam on the first attempt. So I was very happy, just months apart from each other. So it was pretty crazy that time of my life. It was summer of 2016.
Wow. Okay. So 20 of summer 16, you sounded like you finished your associates to be a PTA. Is that correct?
Yep. And then I
Okay.
also got my A certification.
That's a busy year. And then you just finished your bachelor's of science in nutrition.
Yeah, so I've been practicing as a PTA up until like just from 2016 current. And I've been working in several different fields. I started teaching within my field in 2020, so it'll be 2 years this January. And so now I'm working on my DTR credential. I take that exam in a few weeks actually, and I'm hoping I pass it on the first attempt, but there's no guarantees.
Well, so far you're 2 for 2, so I'm hoping 3 for 3. But before we even, I know I want to get to the DTR point really quickly, but I just want to get this background down. So 2016, you did all that, and then what made you decide to venture into nutrition with a degree as opposed to a certification?
Yeah, so as a someone who has an associate's, I always knew that I was going to get my bachelor's. It's just that obviously the associate's comes before the bachelor's. So I figured if I was going to get an associate's degree, I might as well get something where I can make decent money, build a solid career in, and just get experience in healthcare. And so it checked all the boxes for me. And so I went to South Plains College. That is actually where I teach as well. So I have the luxury of teaching where I graduated from. So I'm an adjunct instructor, so I don't teach full time or even part time, but I teach one class, and thankfully it's online, so it allows me to do so many things. And actually, I wanted to do something within South Plains, add another credential to my name, so I pursued the certified electrocardiogram technician. So basically, what it is, you hook your patients up to the electrocardiogram, the EKG, and you can see different chambers within the heart. It does it through electrical impulses. And so I did pass my exam on the first attempt as well. I went through the class. You don't have to go through the class, but I wanted to take the classes to get more hands-on kinesthetic learning. And then after that, I registered for the NHA exam. So NHA is the accrediting agency, and so I got the NHA-CET certificate just this last month.
Oh my goodness. So many things. So you wanted to get your bachelor's, you were saying though, and so you decided to get it in nutrition, but then you went to EKJ. So I'm a little bit all over the place. So what made you decide nutrition for the bachelor's degree?
Okay, yeah. So sorry, I forgot to answer that part.
It's
I
okay.
always knew I wanted to do something with fitness and healthcare. And honestly, most people either do exercise science or nutrition as a bachelor's degree because it's so broad and it's so relatable. Like we exercise every day or we eat every day. Sometimes we do both. And, there's people out there who act as if they have the credentials, but they don't, and they pretend to be experts. And I always knew that I didn't want to be that person. So I wanted to do it the right way and get credentialed any way that I can. And so I know a lot of former people on your show, they have many certifications to prove like, hey, we know what we're talking about, including yourself, Marie. And I just wanted to be part of that exclusive group. I didn't want to abuse any title or anything and not practice outside of my scope of practice. So that's kind of why I'm all over the place.
Yeah, I appreciate it though, because I mean these credentials to me, they tell me that you've put in the work, you've taken the test, you have the connections, even though I don't understand everything that they are. I applaud you for doing things the right way. So you have your bachelor's of science in nutrition, and you're also in a dietetic internship right now. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
So how is that process graduating with your BS and then applying to that dietetic internship for you?
So it was crazy because I mean, I'm in a distance program. So as you can see from the hat, this is the University of Alabama. Um, I got my bachelor's in nutrition from the University of Alabama, and it is a distance program, but they do have an on-campus program. But because of what I do, my jobs, and how busy I am, I'm just unable to do the on-campus one. So I went for the distance one, and after that, I mean, it's not coordinated. So for those of you listening who doesn't know what coordinated means, is you basically have to apply for the dietetic internship separately. So I mean, you're very lucky if you don't have to do that. But for my program, we had to apply to an external internship. And so that's something that I've noticed that a lot of people on the show is they use the DTR credential as a stepping stone. And, as a physical therapist assistant, it's pretty much the equivalent of a DTR. So that's kind of why I wanted to be on the show and just share some light on that. So the DTR is the PTA in physical therapy. So like as a physical therapist, you are at the top, you are the supervisor, and then right below you is a physical therapist assistant. So I know that there's guys out there listening, and just to put it in more basic terms, is you have the head coach and you have the assistant coach. And so basically, you're the assistant, you are the right hand man, you are the person doing all the legwork. You're right there. Basically, they just sign you off on stuff. So that's all it is. And so that's what I've been doing as a PTA, and then I want to do the same thing, but with my DTR, but then also use this not just necessarily as a stepping stone, but I want to do what Marie's doing and spotlight the credential so that we can have more DTRs out there. Because everyone knows about the RD, but people don't know about the DTR. But how often do you look at a sports team and you don't see that they have an assistant coach? I mean, they always have an assistant coach. So we need more DTRs out there. And so, just with this credential, you know, I'm definitely not using it as stepping stone. I just don't like that terminology or way of thinking, because there's people out there who make it a career, and rightfully so. I mean, I was looking at the CDR, the creating agency for nutrition and dietetics, and there's only two credentials out there. It's only the registered dietitian and the NDTR. So we should stop talking about it like it's just some easy cert, because at the end of the day, they only have two certifications you can get. So we should start treating it like it's worth more. And so that's just why I wanted to be on the show and just kind of you know help make it make it better to where it had better exposure, because I feel like there's a lot of negative, negativity with the credential.
Mark, I appreciate that. The way you explained it, I don't know much about PTAs and the assistants, but thank you for that analogy. And I am sure a lot of people were able to identify and relate with that and that coach and assistant coach thing. So well articulated. I'm gonna have to snippet this little piece and like spread it everywhere. I really appreciate your passion behind this credential. So going back to the original question I like to ask everybody. So how did you find out about the NDTR credential?
Yeah, so my program director, he was great, honestly. He helped me find my dietetic internship, but they did not talk about the DTR credential. And so that's something that I had to find out on my own. And it came about by accident, actually. So when I was looking at registered dietetic internships, I don't know how, but I guess the search engine populated, um, you know, NDTR, DTR. It's the same thing for those of you listening. But I mean, some of those searches popped up, and it got me curious. Like, okay, what is this credential? I've never heard of it before. But then since I'm a PTA, a physical therapist assistant, I basically made that automatic connection in my head, like, oh, okay, it's the registered dietitian's assistant. They just don't call it the RDA for some reason. But if you look at other fields like physician's assistant, well, you know automatically that you are assisting the physician. So you look at certified nursing assistant, the CNA, you already know from the name that you're assisting the nurse. And so with the registered dietitian, who's going to assist the registered dietitian? You don't call it that. You call it either the dietetic technician, which is not, they're not certified, or you're with the certification, you're formally called the DTR, which is the dietetic technician registered. It's just so weird how they made it. I think the way that it's named, maybe that's why people don't know about it. Because if they were to maybe like follow suit with the other professions, like a physical therapist assistant, like, oh, okay, he assists a physical therapist. Or I'm also studying to be an occupational therapist. I'm working on my doctorate's degree, and the assistant for them is the certified occupational therapy assistant. So again, it's like, okay, I can see what they're doing. They're assisting the occupational therapist. But with us, again, the RDA does not exist, the name at least.
That is such a good point. There's always like conversations of people not knowing what DTRs are, but I've never thought of it in light of other professions and how it's all the assistants or like the assistant of everything else. So thank you for you have so many good thoughts on all of this. I'm so happy you're on the podcast. This is a great conversation. So you found it kind of just by looking things up. I feel like you're very good at finding new ways to credential and whatnot. And so you're now going to take the exam. So what is making you decide to take the DTR exam when you're already in a dietetic internship?
I definitely want to use it as a way to stay fresh, if that makes sense, because during the internship portion, you're learning how to do your job proficiently. Like, I hate to say this, but I've been through so many programs. I've been doing this. I know I don't look like it, but I'm almost 30. I'm turning 30 in a few months. So I've been doing this straight out of high school. I never took a break. And so I just know that there's the textbook way of doing things and the real world way of doing things. And, honestly, guys, I hate to say this, but the textbook way of doing things does not always occur in real life. I'm not saying that you're breaking rules, but the textbook way of doing things is, it's like a picture perfect scenario where you're going to follow everything through A, B, and C, D all the way to Z. And it just doesn't work that way in real life because mistakes happen, first of all, and then emergencies happen, and then stuff gets busy. And so, I mean, that's just the way it is. And so, I mean, I just also wanted to be on the show to let people know that, life happens, guys, and it's not always going to look pretty, but that's just how it is. And I don't know, Marie, working as a DTR, can you kind of testify to that?
That yeah, when I think 100% as also in this field you're working with people and the textbook does not know how to talk about different personalities. So it's definitely you have definitely learn like what the procedure is and what's in the textbook. But then once you're with people, you have to know how to be flexible, how to deal with diversity, which is why I like to ask DTRs that diversity question and have those conversations because everyone's different and the perspectives that people bring. And that's why it's called practicing, right? Because you're
Right.
never fully learning. So I agree with what you said there. And so um getting to having that DTR credential during your dietetic internship, what do you think it's going to do for you?
So I think that as people see, as I go along further my internship, as my preceptors look at my name, they'll say, oh, okay, he has the NDTR credential. So to me, I want people to know that, okay, this is not just a regular dietetic intern. Even though he hasn't worked as a DTR, he shows that he's competent and able to pass a licensure exam because that's what it is. It's a licensure exam. And, people don't think, they don't really care to think, I guess you can say, about the education and this clinical supervision that NDTRs have to undergo. So sometimes they just think, oh, it's okay, it's an easy certification. They can probably take it at their house, especially with COVID, and then they don't have no schooling, there's no clinical supervision. But then, at the end of the day, if you actually look at the CDR and ASEN, it tells you that you need X amount of supervised clinical hours, and you need to graduate with a bachelor's degree, or you need to have an associate's with, that specific concentration program as an NDTR. And then you have to pass your licensure exam, and then you have to stay credentialed. So there's so much more that goes into it. And I want people, my preceptors, just everyone looking at anything I'm doing is that, okay, this is someone who is well trained in what he does. It's not just someone who took a certification at his house and then he gets, full scope of practice and can do everything a registered dietitian can do. That's not how it works.
Yes. Yeah. And it's, I think for DTRs who are transitioning to dietitians or changing that credential, still being able to speak to what a DTR is, or even you and you're working with preceptors, working with RDs, having that DTR and bringing up that conversation. Because a lot of dietitians, just you never heard about the DTR when you're in your BS program, bachelor's of science, not like a BS program, but in your nutrition program. And that is not okay. As you were saying, CDR only has 2 of the nutrition credentials, so it needs to be talked about. So I think it's great that in your dietetic internship, you are working to take this test, and then we'll be able to speak to that credential and just be a voice for DTRs and show that they are, very important and influential in the field of nutrition. But Mark, I feel like you're superhuman right now because you mentioned that you're in the dietetic internship. You're currently studying for the DTR exam. You're getting your doctorate in physical therapy,
Uh,
right?
Occupational therapy.
Occupational therapy. So, how are you finding time to study for the DTR exam? What are you doing for it?
So honestly, I was listening to a sermon recently and it was talking about how, a lot of people ask, like, hey, what am I going to do? Well, it's realizing not what am I going to do, but what is God going to do? And so, honestly, just allowing my faith and relationship with God just to take over, um, really that's all it is. And so, just being receptive to that and just knowing, okay, God's going to help me get through this. Um, it's honestly been a life changer, and also just having family support. And so, I have my wife who's very supportive. And if it wasn't for family support and just my faith in God, none of this would be possible. Because you hear the saying crash and burn. Like, you think that what I'm doing is you would crash and burn, but you know, I think that just having that strong faith and the support system, it just does wonders for you. Just speaking life, others speaking life into you and knowing, believing in what you're doing. And so I think that's helped me quite a bit. And then you have other people who don't know you so well saying, "Oh, it's just a matter of time till you're gonna crash and burn," or I don't think you can do this, or just people saying, maybe you're biting on more than you can chew. But honestly, things have just fallen in my lap, and I guess we can kind of get there. But like this path has been easier than projected, and it's just me not forcing things. Like I always like to use the analogy as a personal trainer and as a licensed physical therapist assistant. I often have to explain things in easier ways, and as an RD, you have to find ways to explain things and teach your clients and patients. And so for me, like knowing that things have fallen in my lap, I like to use an analogy of like puzzle pieces. So in physical therapy, occupational therapy, we do puzzles a lot. So you work on fine motor skills. If you're standing, you can work on balance, work on cognition. So with the puzzle pieces, I like to use the analogy like as human beings, we try to fit pieces where they don't belong, and patients do the same thing. But really, like, if it's meant to be, or if it's something you've been praying about and you know in your heart that this is what you want to do, and you ask God, you bring it before him, things just naturally fall in place, especially if you're trying to serve him. And so one of my favorite verses is, whatever you do, do it as unto the Lord. And so I just remember being in school, in high school, I went to a Trinity Christian, and that was actually on the gym. And so it's just saying like, hey, whatever you're doing, you can do this for God, whether you're doing like 100 crunches or you're running a mile, whatever it is, just know that you're doing it unto the Lord. And so that's something that I've always lived by personally.
That is great, and honestly makes a little bit more sense because honest what you're doing, everything you're doing, it sounds so overwhelming, but there definitely is a piece about things when you're doing it, when you have a religion like Christianity where you can really just lean on and trust God in that journey. So I appreciate you for sharing that secret of your success, because I think it can work for a lot of people. I know it works for me. So I appreciate you sharing that, Mark. And so specifically, what for studying for the DTR exam, I know a lot of people are listening and they're currently in your position studying for the exam. What softwares or study tips or things that are you utilizing to help you prepare?
I know this sounds crazy, guys, but just like the other podcasts, um, there's really not something that works for everyone. So I recently took a learning style exam through the doctorate program that I started, and so they want you to know your learning style, because if you know your learning style, then learning is going to be easier. So for example, for those of you who are auditory learners, you're going to want to hear your teacher. You might want to hear that lecture over and over again. For those of you who are visual learners, I hear you talk about visual veggies a lot. Maybe that's something that you can utilize. For those of you who are hands-on learners, I used the word kinesthetic earlier. I have to actually be doing something and I have to have my hands on it. But then there's a combination. So you can be like a auditory learner, a visual learner, kinesthetic learner. You can mix them all up. But even then, you might have a preference for something more. So you can be a registered dietitian, but then you can specialize in something. So that's kind of like the same thing. Like, yeah, okay, I may like all of them, but I may lean towards this learning style more. And so for me personally, I learn best by doing things. And so I'm not really necessarily just sticking to one resource, but specifically some of the resources that I'm using is just the education that I've already done. So I'm leaning on all the books that I've already had because, again, I come from a personal training background. And then personal training, I mean, Murray, you could testify to this too. They ask you nutrition related questions on your exam. And I got a fitness nutrition specialty certification. So I have some extra books there. And then also, um, I'm actually taking two culinary courses through South Plains College. And so I want to get my culinary cert. I mean, that's not something I mentioned, but it's only 8 courses. So why not?
Oh
And
my
because it's going to help me study for the NDTR, because the courses I'm taking is very ServSafe specific. So I already have my ServSafe cert, but it expires in 2023, which is 2 years from now. And I'm like, okay, why not take it? My college is paying for it, by the way. So I didn't have to pay for that. So I'm taking 7 courses right now. I'm taking 2 MS courses, and then I'm taking 2 ServSafe courses through the college that I'm teaching at, and then I'm taking 3 doctorate courses in OT. So they're all kind of helping out together because, as you know, with healthcare, it all is related.
overlaps.
Yeah, it all overlaps. It's all related. So it's not overwhelming me, but I'm using it to help me in that, knowing that okay, stuff that I'm learning here will affect this course, and it's really truly worked out that way. So okay, you said you had no idea what an EKG does, but did you know that you can actually look at an EKG and say, oh, this person is hyperkalemic or hypokalemic? And so, okay, who would have thought that you can use your knowledge as an EKG and relate that into the field of dietetics?
That is a great way to study. Usually it's the study softwares or reading through your notes, but it's everything that you have learned and everything that you're gathering and you're learning more and that's helping you study. And honestly, you're really going to know the material for that test because it's DTR and the RD exam. It's so broad. And that's what frustrates a lot of people about studying for these exams. But what you're saying with all of your credentials, all of your experience, I can see how they are interlaid and that helps you with studying. Even what you're learning in the DTR with the dietetic internship is probably helping you study on a day-to-day basis. And that is just a nice way to learn without having to just sit with flashcards in a very boring setting. So thank you for explaining that, Mark, the way that you're studying. And just for some little bit more clarity, can you just say everything you're doing for school right now, what
Yeah,
all the
absolutely.
programs you're in?
So I'm going to start with like at the very top. So at the very top, I'm working on my doctorates in occupational therapy, and if you want to just go below that, it's the MS um, at Illinois State University, and it's
For
concurrent with
nutrition,
my
right?
yes with nutrition, and it's concurrent with my dietetic internship. And then I guess below that, if you want to say, below it's the DTR. So I'm working on that, and right below that, I'm working on just getting my Serve Safe cert again. So I'm taking courses in culinary, and at the end, I mean, I just get to test for my Serve Safe again. I already have it, but I mean, that's built into the curriculum. I'm not going to argue because it's helping me with my food service portion. So Serve Safe is heavily focused on food service, and then you run into some pathogens, bacteria, which might help you with clinical, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, that's all the stuff that I'm doing right now. And then I'm also working as a physical therapist assistant. I keep my license current. I'm teaching within my field, so I'm teaching one course, and then I just got a new job, so I'm going to work in a vestibular clinic. So vestibular, for those of you who don't know, it's related to balance. So when you hear people say balance, you're going to be like, okay, what is that? What are the components of balance? You've got three systems. You got visual, somatosensory, and the vestibular system. And so those are all the systems that make up balance. And so um, that's the field that I'm going to be working in starting Monday. I just got a new job. And then I'm also currently doing home health pediatrics. So I work as a PTA. I go to patients' homes. And actually, right after this interview, I have a patient at 6:30. So I do home health pediatrics. I teach, and then I'm about to work in an outpatient setting with vestibular rehab.
Your resume. Congratulations on the new job.
Oh,
Your
thank you.
resume is so extensive. And so I know you were mentioning your master's degree is part-time, right? And your doctorate is anything, are any of your degrees full-time or are you doing part-time for that?
They say the doctorate's degree is full time. If you look at their full caseload versus their part time like program, I mean it's like the difference between taking 6 or 7 classes at a time versus three. But I guess because it's considered doctorate's program, it's still considered full time. And so for those of you listening, you have what's called asynchronous and synchronous. Asynchronous means that you can do courses without having to be there present at the same time, like this right now. This is synchronous because we're talking, but we're here at the same time. We're meeting at the same time. It's online. So the program is mixed with both, but they understand that we're working individuals, and so their activities are going to be later in the evening. And this is for my OT degree, but for my MS, it's all asynchronous. Like there's nothing that requires us to be doing this. They understand that we just have deadlines, and as long as we submit our assignments by the deadline, it's okay.
I appreciate you sharing that because I know a lot of people in the field of nutrition, they usually want to find something else in and in the medical field. So seeing you do it is a great example of like, oh, this is achievable and this is how someone's doing it. So thank you for sharing that. And so with all of your areas that you're working in the medical field, how has nutrition intertwined with like occupational therapy and what you're doing with your home health patients?
Oh man, it's just so relatable. So eating is what we do every day. I mean, everyone's always talking about what's for lunch, like right after a meeting or right midday. Everyone's always got food on their mind. And there's a lot of people out there who abuse the title of dietitian, registered dietitian, nutritionist, or combination of them. I mean, I know that it may not be intentional, but I mean that's what manslaughter is, right? If you're driving on the road and you hit someone, you didn't mean to kill the person, but I mean it's still hey, you call it manslaughter. And so like for those who are you listening, I'm not trying to be the negative Nancy or the negative person, but at the end of the day, you have to do your due diligence. And so, in the medical field, I know, Marie, you know what this is. You have what's called beneficence and non-maleficence. And so, beneficence is trying to do good, but then non-maleficence is make sure you're not harming your patient. And so, for us as people who are held to a higher stature because we're licensed professionals, we have to make sure that everyone out there is just not loosely using the term like, oh yeah, I'm a dietitian, or I'm a nutritionist, and then you look at the credentials and there are none, because all states are different. And so where I live in the state of Texas, you have to have your LDN, which is your licensed dietitian nutritionist. And then like you have your state licensure, and then you have your credentials as an RD. And so just wherever you move, you're going to have that state licensure, depending on if the state requires it.
Yeah. So kind of steering the conversation just a little bit. So everything you're doing, it's nice to see that nutrition's involved. And I appreciate you having this focus on nutrition, because a lot of times other medical professions know nothing about nutrition, and yet sometimes they do mention things. So it's nice to have someone in the field who like understands what DTRs are doing and what dietitians are doing. But looking forward, what is your ultimate goal in using your nutrition experience in what you're going to be doing in with your life?
I want to open up my own clinic. So I want to be self-employed. And, that's not a surprise because growing up, my parents have always been self-employed. Well, they got to a point where they were able to save enough and then have their own business. And it's also in the healthcare field. My wife's, her mom has a weight loss clinic. So she's always been self-employed. Even before the weight loss clinic, she had other things that she was doing. She was self-employed. And so to me, I always knew that in the back of my mind that, okay, I can see myself working independently one day. And that's what I want to do, because I honestly have no problem working for someone, but I just know that working independently, having my own business, is going to open more doors. And so just going back to my faith, I want to serve the Lord, and I know I can serve God with whatever I do, but by having my own business, I'll be able to practice with more freedom. And this with COVID, there's so many more restrictions now. And so, you know, it is what it is, right? But, I've had to fight for my job really because, you know, I'll be honest, like I did not want to get the vaccine. And so, I didn't want to, and I did it the right way. I did the reason for conscientious reasons, and religion is covered under the Equal Opportunity Employer Act. And then, there's something in legal terms that says, okay, we can work this out as long as it does not cause um, hardship, right? And so, my job, my all my jobs here in Texas have been respectful of that, except for one. And so that just opened doors for me to pursue so much, because I was working full time in a skilled nursing facility, and I was one of the few who didn't get vaccinated. And by them essentially letting me go, I was able to pursue the dietetic internship and the program in occupational therapy. And I didn't have to quit my job. They were the ones that just called me in one day and said, hey, here's your stuff. Do you have any questions? And there was no warning. And so, it just really opened doors. And so I'm just very thankful the way that everything transpired. And so, yeah, that's what happened. That's why I'm able to do so much because I was working full time. The schedule was like pretty rigid, but hey, it worked out.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I know the nursing world, there's a lot of conversations about nurses not wanting to take it for personal reasons. And if you want to get
Right,
it, that's fine too. But it's nice
right.
to hear that, you, in your experience, you were able to not take it and then other things opened up because it could be very stressful for nutritionists, for dietitians, for DTRs, because they're also required to get that vaccine in a lot of places, and they might have to walk out. So again, super just encouraging to hear that you did not take it because you didn't want to, which is good. We have freedoms in this country, and I respect you for choosing what you wanted to do with your own body. And then it's just so nice to hear how it's worked out for you. So thank you. And so you also didn't mention the My Portion Nutrition. What is that? Can you give us a little inside scoop on what you want to do with that?
Yes. So again, it's kind of going back to my faith, my portion nutrition. Um, I'm gonna butcher the verse. So Murray, do you mind if I look it up real
Yeah,
quick?
please do.
So it's based on a Bible verse, and just going back to the freedom is yes, we live in a country where we have freedom and we don't have to impose what we believe in on one another. But honestly, like it was like for me, it was really hard because I'm a really caring person, and I'm someone who realizes, hey, I'm culturally sensitive to people, and I'm also mixed. Like I did my ancestry test, and Marie, looking at me, I mean, you would probably just think, okay, this guy is probably either Pacific Islander or Hispanic or something. But I actually had Eskimo pop up, and I had Nigeria pop up. So, like people would not know this if, but I'm very culturally sensitive, and I realize people comes from different walks of life. But what really upset me, got me frustrated was, you know, f- um, I'm just using these examples, guys, because if I don't use examples, people are not gonna know what the heck I'm talking about. So for a Muslim, obviously they can't eat pork. If someone was like, nope, you're gonna eat pork, this is what we serve in our cafeteria, this is what you eat. Okay, someone's gonna get offended. So for me is they were saying, okay, you have to have this vaccine. You do not have to have this vaccine. It's just that people don't realize that there's a thing called it's like the conscientious form that you fill out for school. So for schools in Texas, at least, if you feel the reasons for conscientious, you have an exemption not to take any vaccine. It doesn't have to be COVID. I don't want to be political. I just want to be objective. Like we have rights, and it's just that people don't know about them. So I'm very passionate about this because people don't know about the NDTR. It's all about doing your research and just knowing, what's out there. And so I want to let people know for whatever reason, guys, all you have to do is do your research and of all walks of life, age, race, color, whatever, religion, you have exemptions out there. So that's all I'm trying to put out there. And for me personally, it's just something that's not known, but obviously, Marie, you know this. When you eat out at a restaurant, they'll have disclosures like, okay, this may have gluten because there's no way to separate the gluten from the other products in the kitchen, or vice versa, or there may be allergens in this, right? So, unfortunately, for those who are in my shoes, for those who identify as Christians, most of us are pro-life, and what they don't tell you is that in the vaccines that they utilize fetal cell lines in the vaccines, right? And so for those who don't know what fetal cell lines are, basically from the aborted fetus, which is the child that was aborted, they hold on to the fetus lines, and then they just replicate them. And so over time, the origin is still going to be from the aborted fetus, but over time they're replicating it. So to them, it disassociates. But for me personally, I just know the origin. And so that's something that I can't benefit from. And so that's just something that I want to be upfront with, just like we are upfront with our menus, right? We're upfront with like, hey, this contains gluten or this contains allergens. I just wish that there was more transparency in the vaccinations. And so you have the developmental phase, the testing, and the production phase. And so in all the vaccines that are out there right now, There's nothing that has no association in the development, testing, or
Mm,
production. The
mhm.
only thing that is the CureVac, and it's not cleared for US. It's just in Germany. But as we're doing this, I'm looking up that Bible verse right now. I just kind of got
Yeah.
sidetracked, but
No,
I'm so
that's okay. I'm wondering how it relates to your my portion nutrition, although all very interesting things that you shared with us. So thank you for that.
sorry. Portion.
Nutrition. Yeah.
Yes. I'm trying to pull up that Bible verse right now. So it's in Lamentations 3:24.
Okay.
And the King James Version says, "The Lord is my portion, saith my soul. Therefore, will I hope in Him." And so, when people hear portion, they just think, okay, portions like nutrition, like 1 cup, a half a cup, um, But for me, I wanted to tie it back into my faith, and so I got my ring right here, and
Mhm.
so we had the option of getting it. Um, like engraved. And so you're probably not gonna be able to see it, but I put another Bible verse in here, which is John 3, 6:35, if I can see it right. Yeah, it's 6:35. And so I'm gonna pull that up since I had just explained this.
Mhm.
And it's something that I want to incorporate in my business as well, in my portion nutrition. So it's really cool how it all ties in.
Yeah, it's nice when you have that mission and that vision and that purpose in what you're putting out there, whatever that is that motivates you, because then it makes people passionate and want to learn from you.
Exactly. I like how you said that. It makes people want to learn from you. And so, what this says, John 6:35, King James is, "And Jesus said unto them, I'm the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth in me shall never thirst." So again, it's nutrition related, but honestly, like it's just saying that there's more to life than just food, whatever it is in front of you.
And
And so
that's so good. Yeah, because a lot of times people are eating and there's also that mentality with food and stuff and trying to find fulfillment in that. So it sounds like your mission behind that is really going to lead people to something that's more fulfilling than just losing weight or getting your goal weight or trying to be healthier in this present life.
yeah, that's the goal.
I'm super excited. Whenever that drops, I will be excited to let all the NDTR audience know about that. And I want to ask just one more question for you. You mentioned it a little bit, but I wanted to get your intake as a male, on the diversity that you have seen in the field of dietetics with the DTR and now the RD credential that you're pursuing.
Yes. I'd be happy to share because honestly, in every field, I would say in every field that I've been in, at least, whether it's therapy or nutrition, there are a lot of females. So in occupational therapy, I want to say there's probably 5 out of 20 in my cohort, in my group, that are males. So that's not a lot of people. And I want to say it's pretty much the same in nutrition, like in my internship, that there's probably the same amount of guys, 5 out of probably 20-ish folks. And so you don't really have to be a math genius to figure out that's pretty low percentage, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just I don't know why, but I got a really good perspective on pay though, from a female, and she is Caucasian. And from listening from the other podcast, we all agree that Caucasian women rule the field of
Mhm.
dietetics, right? So it was a Caucasian woman telling me, and she was actually someone who is an educator as well. So she teaches at a university close to where I live, um, and she was telling me that the reason why the pay of dietetics is so low is because it's mainly predominantly women, and women are not willing to fight for, or I guess they're not really willing to negotiate what their pay is. Right out of school, they're like, okay, I'm just going to take this job. And men are different. I've always been someone to justify my salary, and I'm really notorious for this. So like recruiters do not like me in the area for that reason. Well, and I'm not trying to like be a penny pincher or whatever, but at the same time, I want them to know that, hey, this is what you're paying for. Just like for us, if you pay for quote unquote junk, then it's going to show in your lab values, like if you're constantly eating like the sugary processed stuff, it's going to show up in your hemoglobin A1C. What comes in is what comes out. And so, I just want the companies that know that, hey, you're getting, this is what you're getting. And so I negotiate my salary, and women unfortunately are not likely to do that. And she told me that she did not negotiate. Right out of school, I mean, I remember, I'll be transparent with what I was making as a PT assistant. So my first job, I got offered $28 an hour, and so that's with an associate's degree as a PT assistant. And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, right now, you know, I'm making, one of my jobs, I'm making $45 a visit, and a visit's not even a full hour, with my home health company. Um, you know, Another job I was making 35 an hour, working at a facility, and this is just was an associate's degree.
Mhm.
So, just an associate's degree. I just want to put that out there because there's a lot of people who think, oh, this guy just has an associate's degree education. He's probably getting associate degree pay. That's not the case, guys. I mean, this is not why I wanted to get into field dietetics, but dietetics is the minimal bachelor's degree, and they're like pretty low with pay. So I'm not in it for the pay. I'm in it because I love the field. I want to put the NDTR credential out there. I want to put respect on the RD credential, and I want to show them that, hey guys, you know what? Um, it's not in your scope of practice. So what bugs me is that there's other clinicians, like, whether they're a PT or an OT, and I can say this because I'm in the field. They think that they took a course in high school or college, or they got this certification that, hey, you know what, I'm a RD now. Like I can write meal plans, I can monetize this. And like if you look at the scope of practice, a lot of things they're doing are not within their field. And there's just, maybe slaps on the wrists, or maybe people are not even realizing it, or they do, they just don't want to do anything. But that's how change doesn't happen, is like we have to be the voice, and we have to let them know, like, hey, you know what, do you see me doing your job? Like, it would absolutely blow people's minds if we were out there performing brain surgery, right? We're not licensed to do that. We don't have that education. It's not in our scope of practice. But people think that, okay, you know what? Nutrition is not brain surgery. But guess what? As I said, what you put in is what you put out. And I believe this is a quote from, is it James? I don't want to butcher this quote. Do you mind if I share with you one of my favorite quotes?
Yes, please do. Please do.
Okay, cool. Um, so it's basically letting food be your medicine. But I want everyone listening. Okay, so it's Hippocrates. I can't say it, Hippocrates.
Yeah.
So let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food.
Yes.
Um, so in the medical realm, there's a lot of so let me just put this out there too. I have family members that are medical doctors, okay? But I had an uncle, he did not know what the glycemic index was. So he went to medical school like 30 years ago. And, running into doctors now, I mean, I would say that they're probably more trained in nutrition, but they just have to know so much about everything that, obviously they're not going to know how to do enteral tube feedings, right? So they're not going to know the calculations for that. And even for some of us that have the credential, it's hard because it's just very detailed. So, anyways, the point is, even if you're a medical doctor, you are not going to know everything about nutrition. And being in the dietetic internship right now, I'm seeing a lot of medical doctors or people who function as a medical doctor, whether they're a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant, and they have no idea about like the food textures and like just the chemistry side. Like, for example, they were wondering if they can discharge someone on, or if they can give someone ice cream, like, hey, can this patient have ice cream? And then she was explaining, like, once the ice cream melts,
Yep.
and it's going to turn into a liquid, and that's the reason why we can't give them this. And they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. It's not that they're, not smart. Obviously, they're medical doctors, but they're not trained in nutrition. And so, it's just something that like I wanted to share with the people listening, is like, there's medical doctors who I'll give them this, that I could not be a doctor and I have no intentions of wanting to be one. But yet the question you asked me is, what do you want to do with nutrition? What's your ultimate goal? Is have a business, right? I want to have a business, and I want to let people know that you can be successful in the field of healthcare without having to be a doctor, because everyone has this, high regard, like, oh, you know what, you're a medical doctor, I'm just a registered dietitian, or I'm just a physician's assistant, I'm just a physical therapist, I'm just a certified nurse, I'm just a nurse. No, it's not that way, like you can thrive, you can be successful in whatever career path you want to do. And that's why I keep going back to, that verse I shared earlier. I think it's Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, do it unto the Lord. And so
Yes.
honestly, it's like, no, I think as a society, we identify with our titles so much. But for me, okay, you may be like, you're a hypocrite because you're getting all these titles. But for me, the reason why I'm doing it is totally different. I want to be able to say that, okay, you know what, this is where I'm coming from. And I'm not just someone who's taking the scope of practice without the credentials. I'm actually educated in it. But I'm not using it as to like build my platform. I'm wanting to make sure that I'm going about things in the right way so that people know where I'm coming from. And I'll give you an example. I have a lot of supervisors who were an assistant before they became a physical therapist. And so for me, if I'm talking to NDTRs, it'd be very different if I was a dietitian saying, oh yeah, this and that about an NDTR. But the fact that I got the exam, passed the exam, maybe I can practice as an NDTR, before my RD, but they can be like, okay, he's been there, he's done that. I have a deeper connection with him.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I'm doing all this.
Mark, so every time you speak, I just have to sit and listen and just take everything. And it's so encouraging. But your perspective on what that woman told you about the lower pay for dietitians, that is, I've never heard of that before, but I think there might be some truth to that. And so for everyone listening, even for myself, negotiating salaries is very uncomfortable for me, but that's a big thing that private practice dietitians now need to do, or doing more of, like saying what they're valued and charging good prices and making more money. And that's such a phenomenal idea, but it really shouldn't be. So I love what you said there. And then with the doctors, and that them not knowing everything, but then you coming in and being able to, come alongside them and help them with practicing. But I think what was most encouraging with what you were saying is to not put such pressure or so much weight on the credential, but use it for the scope and the education to open doors for you. But don't let it also limit you. If you're not a doctor, that's okay. If you're a DTR, you can still do a lot of things. It's really that mental mindset and that ability to speak up for yourself, be confident, and reach the goals and prove that you know what you're talking about. So, oh my goodness, I hope everyone has enjoyed this spotlight. It has been so encouraging. And is there anything else, Mark, that you want to leave with the audience? You've given us so much, but I just want to open it up a spot one more time. If there's anything else you want to leave with them.
Um, no, but I do want to thank Bree for just starting this spotlight, because again, if it wasn't for running into this, I wouldn't have known as much as I know about NDTRs, and I was really encouraged in getting to hear everyone's background. I think that Marie is like the perfect candidate for this channel and podcast. I'm glad that she started, because I saw a video where she had like 3 different jobs within 3 years. That's one of your videos, right?
Yes.
3 ADTR
Mhm.
jobs. So she
Mhm.
knows what she's talking about. And I love the fact that she's super humble, well articulated. She always gives people on the show a fair shake, always presents us in a light that's encouraging, never demeaning. So I feel like for anyone listening who wants to be on the show but's kind of hesitant or is kind of intimidated, just don't worry about that. Marie is very kind, and I'm just glad she started this channel, this podcast, because it is doing wonders for the profession. So all I want to say is that I'm very thankful for her allowing me to be on her show, and she's actually a registered dietitian now. So I feel like it's really cool how she still identifies as an NDTR. I noticed that the verbiage that she uses, she'll say like, we or us. She doesn't just like toss that credential to the curb. She still identifies as that, even though she's moving on to bigger and better things. And I say that with quotes because, again, just because you're NDTR, it doesn't mean that it's a stepping stone or the ultimate goal is RD. Everyone's path is different. So, I just want everyone to be encouraged and change the way that they view things.
I appreciate that. Thank you for all those kind words, Mark. And again, thank you so much for reaching out and asking to be on the podcast. I do a lot of work trying to find NDTRs, and I can't find all of the gems out there. So again, as Mark said, like reach out if you're scared. Mark, when he reached out to me, he just wanted to share his journey and his goals. And that was it. He didn't say he had to do anything crazy or he wasn't talking about his credentials. He just wanted to share with you guys to encourage you. And that's what I really want this podcast to be. And that's what I think it's been so far. So I hope you've been encouraged, and I hope that Mark has showed you that you can do some impossible things I didn't think you could do. And I really appreciate your time. Make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll see you in our next episode. Have a great, great day. All right, I'm going to stop.